So how have you been? Are you still in Washington or are you in Salt Lake?
I am. Yeah, I've been good. I've been traveling around a bunch, but I am back in Washington, just north of the border from Portland. I think we talked about that before a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Are
I'm back
you
for just a week is all before I head out for another month. Gonna be floating around for some client work.
Oh, nice. Where are you going?
Yeah, so I will be in LA for about a week and a half, and then Salt Lake, hanging out at that office with Tim. So,
Cool. Have you guys got anybody else on board or is it still you and Tim?
no, yeah, it's just me and Tim right now working. So we've had a few projects where we've brought on some illustrators, which has been really cool. Um, and yeah, it's been a really fun opportunity to meet with, because we went international with it. So it's been really cool meeting
What?
just different approaches with different artists from around the world. We work with some guys from South Africa. I was using some of that Spanish language, uh, some of the Spanish language skills for some clients in Spain, and we've been just some guys over in England and Australia. It's been really cool.
Whoa. So what are you working on?
So that was for the survivor stories that I recently posted on my Instagram page, where it's the kind of well, it's not depressing, but it's kind of hard to work on because it's these stories about women that have been sexually assaulted. And so you just hear these really just emotionally difficult stories, and you have to find a way to convert them into an accessible story for an audience
Uh-huh.
without being overly graphic or offensive or anything that could be a trigger. So it's walking this really fine line of how do we be true to this story or this person's experience without like cleaning it up so much that it's sterile.
Oh my goodness. How did you come
Yeah.
across this client?
That was actually a request for a pitch in Salt Lake. So what happened is we just got an email and said, hey, we heard about you guys, do some animation, and we want you to submit a quote on what you think it would do to, or what it would take to complete essentially 9 videos. And so Tim and I sat down and kind of brainstormed, reviewed all of the reference that they had sent over, reviewed the big work order that they had sent over. So it was all very thorough. And we just made a plan of attack of each video, a strategy. We proposed different artistic treatments and then pitched that to the company. And they asked, I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I think it was something like 10 studios
Uh-huh.
for a quote. And we just expected not to hear much back because, we're small time. We're not like a big agency or anything. And we got a call back and they said, hey, you guys are top 3. And from that phase, we competed directly with other agencies in Salt Lake, like like big agencies. And so Tim and I just went nuts and focused on that we had a 1-month deadline to create a 30-second piece. And we just spent
Whoa.
every moment we had on this video just hoping to win the bid. And we turned it in with our month deadline. It turned out to be a minute-long animation, and the client paid for it, which was really great. They said, hey,
Nice.
here's our budget. We want a 30-second. So it wasn't like spec work or anything.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we delivered that to them and crossed our fingers, and we got a call back a week later, and we won the full account for a year's worth of work. And so it was
Oh my
really,
gosh.
yeah, it was
Congratulations.
really,
That's
really
great.
exciting. Thanks. Yeah, it was really nice because we were able to just focus on the work instead of having to
Yeah.
go out and find clients and that whole drill. So it was a really great
Yeah.
opportunity for us, and the client was phenomenal. We were able to go in and talk to them about the entire process because they were kind of new to animation. So we had a kickoff meeting where we explained all the different phases. Here's where we do storyboards, and here's where we do style frames, and the difference between an animatic and a final version of animation. And we were able to really just, and I hope, educate them in the process for future clients or that they work with.
Wow, that is so cool. If honestly, if there's anybody that deserves it, it's you guys. That's
That's
awesome.
thanks, man. Appreciate it. That's
Yeah.
really nice to say.
Can you tell us who you were competing with?
Probably not, but it was pretty much
Yeah.
from what I understand, it was pretty much all of the agencies in Salt Lake because they gave us 6 names, and like I said, I'm pretty sure there were 10. So
Yeah.
yeah, some of it would be speculation with names. I don't want to make anybody feel bad or throw them under the bus, but
Yeah.
the
No.
other two
Yeah.
that we competed against. Actually, I thought they turned in some really cool work. So, yeah, I was not surprised that they went with us, but the the other the other agencies delivered some high quality animation. So it wasn't like we were just competing against some kids from school. So
Yeah. So now that you have like a full year's worth of work from them, are you guys pursuing any other clients or just focusing on that?
yeah, we are pursuing other clients. We've actually just been it's been crazy right now for us in a good way. It's all as a freelancer contractor, small business owner, it's always like feast or famine. Like, do I
Yeah.
take this work? I'm currently spread pretty thin, but I don't know if next month we're even going to have any or the month after that. And so we've still just been taking on everything. So we've got a few. So we've got 6 projects going on with 6 different clients right now. Right now.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So, yeah, so it's getting real hairy. I've taken on a larger production role in terms of being really organized with deadlines and dates and phone calls and trying to keep everything super tidy because if even a deadline gets pushed 2 days, that starts overlapping with other work that we're supposed to be starting on, and so
Oh
it
wow.
becomes a game of uh, Tetris, essentially, just trying to fit everything together. But in a good way, like it's first world problems. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
No complaint.
So I remember you saying one time to me that you will not start work before 11 o'clock. Are you starting work before 11 o'clock now?
No, actually, I don't. I just stay up later. I was actually telling a friend today I didn't get up till 11:30,
Nice.
and however, the huge caveat is that I usually don't go to like this past week. I haven't been going to bed till about 5 a.m. So it's not
Oh my
like
gosh.
I'm wrapping the day at 6 p.m. and working 5 hours a day or whatever. I just
Yeah.
work until I'm exhausted and fall asleep until I wake up and just rinse and repeat. But I just find
Wow.
that for me personally, I'm able to just really get in the zone when there's no distractions. Like if there's nothing to do, like, oh, I want to go see a movie, or oh, I want to go out and have a long lunch. If everything's closed and the world is quiet, there's nothing I can do but get in the zone and just get a lot of work done. Usually, like even when I was at my agency jobs before I started this up with Tim and Mike, was struggling to be productive between the hours of 10 and noon. Just sitting at
Mhm.
my desk trying to be productive. You know how you sit there and you're working, but it's just ending up like it's unusable. You're just trying to struggle through the creative process.
Yeah.
So it's just for me, it's always naturally been in the afternoon to late nights when I'm able to essentially fit 2 hours worth of work in 1 hour because everything's clicking and everything's just flowing.
So are you noticing your skills are just improving because of this workload?
Yeah, I said that hesitantly because it's hard to see an increase in skill when it's almost just more diverse work. So normally I'm not doing a lot of dynamic type simulations in Cinema 4D, but I've got
Yeah.
projects where I just got to figure it out. And so it's adding skills, but it's hard to say like, oh yeah, I'm a master of dynamic simulations now. It's just like, nah, it's just a new tool in the arsenal. But
Right.
yeah,
So it's recorded. This is a podcast, but tell me about Like getting in the zone? I'm curious. So are you getting in the zone faster now, you're saying, than you were before?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because I feel like I found my natural clock and what works for me. Like I'm just not a
Uh-huh.
morning person. I just don't focus well in the morning, and I'm just groggy and slow. And so I just kind of sleep until I wake up. I very rarely set an alarm, and I just wake up and I'll goof off on the phone, get all the Facebook, the Instagram, the Reddit, all the new music. Just get that out
Yeah.
of the way before I even get into the office, because I know it's going to distract me. I know I'll just sit down in front of the computer and do that stuff if I don't get it out of the way. And
Right.
I'm not lying to myself. Like, oh, I can sit down and ignore all that stuff all day, and I'll check it at the end. I know myself well enough that I just got to knock it out, not think about it, and get it off the plate. So,
Man.
um, yeah, so that helps clear the plate. So when I come into the office, um, I'm able to just start cranking on emails and just start animating, looking over contracts, reviewing work orders, and just getting all the kind of menial tasks out of the way. And then once all that junk is off the plate, then I really get in the zone of animating. Once I start getting some keyframes put in and start getting in with a curve editor, is
Yeah.
when I feel most comfortable. It's just my plate has to be clear. I'm not really great at multitasking when it comes to animation. I just, how you'll just start putting some animations together, and you're like, oh, I got to send that email real quick. So you get pulled out of the zone, and you got to send the email.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got to do this other thing, and I like to just linearly crank through an animation. I don't like coming back and forth and back and forth with it.
Nice. Yeah. No, I hear you. That's what you gotta do. I Man, it just sounds like you're so busy and just on it right now. That's cool. Can you go back to when you weren't always like that? Maybe there was a
Yeah,
time.
yeah, pretty much every agency job I ever had. It was really hard. I remember my first full-time job. I was at this medical agency in Utah, and it was with a group of really talented 3D animators, and just kind of a small company. I think there was maybe 12 employees total. And I remember my first interview, I knew myself well enough to say, hey, I need an office space for myself, because it was kind of an open floor concept where they had their desks all set up in a big conference room type situation. And I get so easily distracted by people talking and other people's music, people chewing, or just any of that stuff. It's really distracts me. So I go in. I'm like the new guy on the block, and I'm saying, hey, part of my contract is I want my own office space. And I felt like such like a tool, like this new guy coming in demanding, like, I don't want to sit with these slabs. I want my own space. And yeah, I don't know if it hurt the culture for me, like trying to integrate. I don't really think it did, but I was still like the guy working behind the closed door on my own. And from a manager's point of view, I could see that being like, is this guy actually working? But for me, it was like the easiest way to get in the zone was just literally close the door on everybody and just zero distractions and just work. And so that was actually a really productive time. But then when I went to other agencies where I didn't have the clout or the title to get a closed office space, it was really, really hard. I was at an agency in Salt Lake, and my desk was next to the break room. And so
Oh.
every single person that would take a break would, they're on break, so they want to come over, they're getting a coffee or they're grabbing their lunch, and they want to chat. So they come over and talk to me. And it's like 9 or 10 people every day
Oh.
coming over and stopping me every 15 minutes, every half hour. And they'd say, hey, cool, what are you working on? I'd love to see that. And so I'd be like, I'm kind of, I don't really have time. I'm on a deadline here. So that was really hard. There were times when I had actually set up a remote client and talked to my boss. That boss was awesome, like great, great boss. And so I'd say, hey, I'm putting a remote client on my desktop, and I'm going to go hide out somewhere else in the building and just work remotely, essentially controlling my desktop from my laptop somewhere else in the office, so people can't come talk to me. Because even if you
Right.
have headphones on, people like tap you, hey, what's that? That's cool. And you're like, guys, I'm trying to focus. And so that was some of the least productive time. And so I was usually working late at that place, just trying to get caught up. And when it's salary, it's kind of frustrating because, you're putting in extra hours and not really getting financially incentivized to do that.
So can you tell the people listening about you, first of all, a little bit of your history and Nocturnal and how you started Nocturnal?
Yeah. So I guess the long story short is I grew up just always wanting to do some form of animation. Like originally I just wanted to be a cartoonist. That was it. And then Toy Story came out and I switched in 8th grade. I said, I want to work at Pixar. I want to be a 3D animator. And so I focused everything I had. Like I went to figure drawing classes. I had art classes that were designed to help me animate. And the idea was either to go to Cal Art or BYU. And I had the opportunity to actually fly out to BYU and meet with their program directors while I was still in high school and learn about this fledgling animation program that they were setting up. At the time, it was part of the industrial design program at BYU. It wasn't even its own thing. It was like an emphasis in industrial design. And so the professors were like, hey, this is what we're looking to do. We're looking to set this up and, come take a look at it. And that was enough for me to, and the cost of school there was significantly cheaper than Cal Art. Like that was a major role as well. And so, I went to BYU and tried to get in the animation program, took all of the prerequisites, had worked on a portfolio, and I didn't get accepted the first time. And that was like a huge blow to my ego because since 8th grade, I had been focusing on becoming a 3D animator and got some feedback from the professors. I said, hey, you need to work on this a little bit and a little bit of this. I went on a 2-year service mission for the church and the LDS Church, for those of you who are listening and not familiar with it, and came back, and I had about 3 weeks to apply for the animation program. And so I paid this guy to be a personal figure drawing coach, teacher,
Oh, wow.
and he was amazing. He was so good, and I just was not at that level, and I was trying to get really good, and he's like, you need to slow it down, you're not ready to start shading stuff like this yet, and you're not ready here. And I'm like, I don't have time for this, I have to submit. And so threw in my portfolio into the review and didn't get in again. And I was super frustrated because I was like, these professors know who I am. I came out in high school and they know I'm diligent. It's I really want to be in, and I've made myself known, and I'm working hard. And then I got a form letter from BYU that from the animation department that said, okay, you've applied 2 times. You can no longer apply. You need to go find something else to do.
What?
Which was, I was like, that's the only reason I'm at this school is to do animation. I have no interest in anything else. And so I sat down with the professors. I set up a meeting. And I said, hey, listen, I will go to a different school. There's no reason for me to be here. Please let me apply again. I've only been back from doing the service mission for a month. So I know I'm a little rusty, but, is there, can I apply again? And they made an exception. They said, okay, one more time, you can apply. And so I started working on the student films. Before I was even accepted into the program, I was sitting down and helping with rotoscoping stuff and helping organize papers, and just anywhere where they needed slave labor, I was there, willing to help. And I made friends with the students. And at the time, I'm not sure if it's this way now, I'm under the impression the students were able to sit in on the portfolio reviews for students that were applying to the program. And so when I applied for the 3rd time, and at this point, I had finished all of my required courses. What are those called again? Not
prereqs?
Not even the prereqs. I had finished all my science and English and math and
generals.
My generals. I had finished all my generals. And so if I didn't get into the animation program, it was, I I had to transfer schools and hope my credit switched over into a new school. And at that time I got in, and I was super grateful. And at the time I was happy because, well, obviously because I got in, but I was more happy that I knew that I got in on my own merits and not just because, I knew somebody, or I come in as a high school student and Brown knows my way in with the professors. I mean, they really made me earn it. And that set the tempo for my entire career, essentially, was learning how to work hard and get really well, I guess, and to preface that, one of the things that I learned at BYU, which was by far the most important thing in my entire career, was I didn't learn about any of the software in school. I didn't learn about any of the technical stuff, and a lot of students did. It didn't click with me. But what I learned was getting comfortable doing things that I had no idea what I was doing or how to do it. So, for example, they say, hey, we need you to model something as a polygon, come back in a semester and show us what you have. And then you just go off on your own and talk to other students and research on the internet and go buy books and try and solve it. And so the entire curriculum was based on learning to ask for help and learning how to find help. And so when I jumped into my career, I was really comfortable saying yes to things that I had no idea to do. They'd say, hey, do you know how to, do this reflective glass for this car ad we're doing? And I'd say, yeah, totally, I can do that. And then I'd go home and just research all night long on how to do glass. And I'd do R&D on my own time until I could go in, the next day and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Because it's all about just being one step ahead, like just one step ahead of them. As long as you know just a little bit more, then you're like an authority. But so I worked a few jobs after graduating from BYU. And I guess for all the listeners out there, I worked at an agency as a PA, a production assistant, for 1 week is all I lasted. Because I got to that agency, and it was almost as if I was being initiated into the agency. I was requested to go outside and pick up cigarette butts and throw them away because directors were coming to the studio. Every day I'd have to go move people's cars because they park out on the street and the meters would run out, or they get, their tires marked with a chalk because you couldn't park for more than 4 hours or whatever. And one day I went to the farmer's market in Santa Monica, and they asked me to buy $300 worth of organic berries for like snack time at the office or some stupid thing like that. And I nearly had a heart attack because that was like what I was making in a week, essentially. And they're spending it in like one afternoon on berries. I'm like, this is such a waste of my time. Like, I got so much better things I want to be focusing on the animation. Like, I know that I'm not going to come in and be some senior level, whatever, but I'm moving cars and picking up cigarettes and buying berries is such a joke. And I went to the hiring director that brought me on, and I said, how long is this going to go on? I mean, I've got a degree in animation, so I'd kind of like to be animating. And they told me 8 months, like 8 months to a year minimum. I was like, nope, don't have time for that. And so I quit. And they were so
Wait,
mad.
so they told you 8 months you're going to be initiated? I don't understand.
Yeah. So air quotes, initiated. I was doing production assistant stuff, but it was just just a waste of my time and my degree and my aspirations. It's like, no, I want to hit the ground running. I don't want to slowly work up to being able to open After Effects.
Yeah, you got to get away from that.
Yeah. And so they gave me an exit interview, and they were really upset, and they were it's kind of funny now, but they said like, you lied on your resume. And I'm like, what? And they said, you said you wanted to work at the best production house, and that's us. And obviously you lied because you don't want to be here. And I'm like,
weird.
Like,
that sounds weird.
It's weird, but honestly, they are like number one. I mean, they are spectacular and they're really good. But it's just I don't like playing all the political games of like working your way through the ranks and rubbing people's backs and blah blah blah.
Right.
It just should be based on merit. And so after that, I went out to Salt Lake, worked at the medical agency. From the medical agency, went to an agency up in Salt Lake and worked there. And I just was not, after a year of being there, I just was not at the agency in Salt Lake. I was not feeling challenged. I was kind of doing the same projects over and over and over again, and just wasn't feeling like I was being pushed. And so, I talked to my boss and said, hey, listen, like I need more, like feed me more, give me more challenges, give me more, just give me more. And he obliged, which was awesome. I mean, he started giving me more projects, and then I realized that I was doing like creative director's work. I was like, the creative director would go on vacation for 3 weeks, and I'm sitting here covering, all of the stuff with the client. I'm getting calls directly from the client. I'm like, this is not my, like, I don't know the answers to these. I'm just, a motion designer. Like, and I'd have to go through and like, no, the frame rate is not, we can't do it at 12 frames a second. We need to film it at 23.976 or 30. But either way, we need to make that decision now. And all these little technical things that it's fine that he doesn't know, because the creative director was, he had a background in copywriting, not in film or animation, or of course he wouldn't know that stuff. But so I got challenged a lot and decided that I could handle a lot more, and that I could go out on my own, and I was comfortable enough saying yes to clients where I didn't necessarily know how to solve their problems or come up with solutions for them or collaborate with them in some strategic partnership. But I knew that from being that challenged and being given opportunities at the agency in Salt Lake, that I was capable to handle that kind of stuff. And so I took a leap of faith and left a really cush job with people that were really talented and that I liked working with them, but I just wanted to go off on my own and sleep in till 11 and work really late and, and hopefully, make some more money while doing all that. And so I was freelancing in Salt Lake and kept crossing paths. I'm sorry, this has turned into a really long story.
No, it's awesome. This is great. This is great. And keep going.
So I was freelancing around Salt Lake, and I kept crossing paths with this guy, and his name was Mike. And clients would say, this guy will do it for less. And so I'd have to lower my bid. And so I'd lower it a few $100, and then they'd use me as leverage to get Mike to lower his bid. And then I'd have to, and it was going back and forth. And I was like, I don't know who this Mike guy is, but I hate him. Like, he is the worst. He's like my enemy. He's my motion freelance enemy. He's threatening my livelihood. And we had a mutual friend from college, and my friend Lance, he would say, dude, you have to meet Mike. You guys will get along. And I'm like, I hate Mike. I don't ever want to meet him. I want to crush him. That's it. He's my competition. And I randomly got a call up. Or maybe it wasn't random. I don't know. Maybe Lance was working some behind-the-scenes magic or something to try and get us to meet up. But Mike was at an agency, a different agency in Salt Lake, and I got brought on to do some freelance at that agency. And I got up early. I was at the office by 8:30 in the morning, which is like early for creatives. And I dressed up kind of fancy. I was wearing a tie and trying to look all professional. Like, I'm going to intimidate this guy. Like, I want to be sitting in his office when he gets there in the morning, and I want to be in the zone and just like, oh, hey, yeah, Mike, I'm Eric. You've probably heard about me before. Like, and I'm sitting there. It's 10 in the morning, and this dude rolls into his office because Mike at the time was, he had a good enough title that he could have his own office. So he rolls in, he's got a cup of peanut M&Ms, and he's got a pork chop, a cold pork chop on a fork. And I'm like, this guy is just too cool. Like, he was so cool. He just rolls in like, hey, what's up, man? You want some M&Ms? He's like, extending his cup out to me, his cup of peanut M&Ms. And I worked for a full week at the agency in his office, and we just hit it off. And I was, in our talking throughout that week, I said, Mike, instead of undercutting each other, we just need to team up and like create our own agency or just collaborate or just find a way to work together instead of essentially strangling each other out of the business. And didn't think much of it. It was just kind of a comment in passing, and I got a text or a call, I don't recall which, from him almost a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later. He said, "All right, let's do it. I'm quitting my job. Talk to the wife. She's cool with it." That's how it started. It was like, oh wow. Okay. So for me, it was very little risk because I was single and I was fortunate enough that I didn't have any debt. And so for me, it was like very minimal risk. It was like, well, if it doesn't work out, no big deal. I eat ramen noodles and I get some roommates, like worst case scenario.
Right.
But Mike had just had a baby and he had just bought a house and he was just quitting his full-time job and his wife had just quit her full-time job. And so for him, it was way riskier of a move. It was like, are you sure, dude? Like, I don't know if you know what you're getting yourself into. And yeah, we met up and just figured out a way to do some of the billing and talked about how we would create our very first demo reel, because at the time there were some agencies in Salt Lake who had just started up and people had left other agencies to form their own, and they were showing work that they had done while at their former agencies. And there were rumors of like lawsuits that were going to happen, and it was just a big ugly mess, because it was essentially like, if I work at Pixar and then I get hired on at a new company and that new company says, "Yep, we've done work for Pixar." It's like, dude, like, and so it was kind of like a fine line where, I mean, yeah, they'd worked. It was, yeah. So Mike and I didn't want anything to do with that, and so we had created a bunch of spec work. We had taken all of the work we had done as freelancers on our own and combined it together, and we created a demo reel and just started shopping that around, doing cold calls and hitting up all of our clients that we had as individual answers.
Wow.
And, so just from the ground up, we started with nothing. I remember our very first project, and about the same time, right before the first project had really kicked off, I recall Mike was telling me about this guy named Tim. And Tim worked at Disney full time, and Tim and Mike had met at an agency in Salt Lake before they separated ways. And Mike was like, "Tim's the best motion designer I've ever met. He's super smart. He's artistically insanely gifted, like just all around great guy. I want to bring him on as a partner." And I said, "All right, Mike, I trust you. Like, I know you're good enough to make that call." And we brought Tim on as a third partner, just 33% across the board. And Tim just blew my mind. Like, the first time I met him, I flew out to LA to meet him. Or actually, I flew into LA and then I drove up to, I don't remember, Pasadena, I think is where he was. Sat down in an office space we were renting for him there, and the dude just blew my mind. He was just so filthy talented. And even to this day,
he is
the best
very, very, very good. He's very good.
Yeah. And so we brought him on, and so because I had my contacts at the medical agency, I hit them up and I said, "Hey, do you guys need some motion stuff done?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." And they gave us 6 videos, and the budget at the time I thought was killer. I was like, "This is amazing. This is so great. It's going to be, our first project. We're kicking it off on the right foot." And that, almost to this day, is the second worst experience I've ever had with with a contract.
No.
Or with, and by the end of it, there were so many rounds of revisions and deliverables were not outlined, and we didn't have contracts because we were naive and like, yeah, we trust them. And it turned into, we actually ended up having to pay a few $100s to get the projects done. So we came out negative after 2 months of work on the project.
I think you told me about this because remember I called you about that medical animation.
Yeah, and I was probably like, don't do it. I mean, all the medical companies are awesome to work with. You should definitely always work with them. No.
Man. Yeah, I was in desperate need, and I called you up, and just your sympathy telling that story made me feel so much better because I felt like a failure. That was good.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, some of those it's when you get into all the super legal and technical stuff, or we'd have them come in and say, oh, you rotated that surgical tool 10% and it needs to be 8.5, and we're like, well,
Whoa.
technically it is 8.5, and like, well, it looks like 10. We're like, so it was like going back and then having to do re-renders because we didn't really have a pipeline at the time that was really good. Like we weren't delivering.
Oh my gosh.
Super rough. So yeah, and at the time, like, yeah, I was traveling, and so I was actually I was at Disney World at the time when the project was supposed to be done like 3 weeks earlier. I'm at Disney World getting calls from clients, and I'd have to leave Epcot to go work in the hotel and get this stuff done.
Oh my gosh.
Literally paying them money to get this project done while missing out on Disney World. It's like the worst thing ever. And so after that, it was a really good lesson to learn early on, because it was like, you need to figure out exactly what your deliverables are. You need to figure out exactly what the client is delivering to you before the project. You don't touch anything until contracts are signed. And probably what we do now, if it's a smaller client or somebody that we're not, or that doesn't have a reputation that we know of, we do a little research on them, because we've run into issues where we've had clients that have been sued multiple times, and the client wins the lawsuit because of small things that they have in the contract. So yeah, we try and have if it's like a big project, we have a lawyer look over all the stuff and do a background check on the client before we commit to doing anything. And so we were just fortunate to learn that really, really early on in a really hard way.
Wow, man, it's just so impressive to hear you talk, because I think about the clients I'm servicing. They're just, small businesses, super small. And the stuff you're dealing with just seems another scale. It's cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the early stuff was really, really small. I mean, like, we were doing a lot of really small projects. I mean, I probably, the first year of the business, I probably could have applied for food stamps. we were barely making anything. But I had.
How did you get the word out to? I mean, you guys are obviously super talented, but how did the word get out to everybody that you're available? I mean, because your clients are everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah. So yeah, we're working with some clients in Norway right now. We've got a bunch in California. We've done some in New York. Like, we've done, yeah, I mean, everywhere over the U.S. and some in the world. I mean, and it comes back, and this is why I guess, like, I told the part about BYU not getting into the program the first time, is I'm pretty confident I got in on my own merits, but what really greased the wheels was getting to know all the students while I was working on the films, although I wasn't in the program. Essentially, that was my first experience in networking. And so we try and be really, really careful to keep our relationships healthy. We try not to burn anybody. We always try and pay well. We try and be quick to respond to emails and under promise and over deliver with our clients, because we know that in agency life, I don't know, what, a 2-year, like, people last an agency 2, maybe 3 years before they jump ship and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if you have a good relationship with them, and if they're talented and they're moving up in the agency world, they'll bring your reputation with them. And so, Mike has since left the company, but Tim and I have contacts at all sorts of different places, just because those small gigs that we were willing to take on earlier turned into these good relationships, and those networks turned into creative directors or art directors, senior art directors, all sorts of different things. So, when we had clients, when we were doing stuff for Vizio TV or Lexus or Acura, or even Quicksilver, Billabong, all these brands, was because we had taken the time to build a relationship with somebody who didn't have influence at the time, who later got influence. And so they knew we weren't just brown nosing them or whining and dining them. I mean, we had built trust before they were sticking their neck out on the line for us to complete a project for them.
So are you working with mainly agencies, or do you have a couple just clients, businesses that you work on too?
We do both. So yeah, we the original business model that we had set up was for agencies that didn't have motion design departments, because a lot of companies, it just doesn't make it doesn't make sense for them to have a full dedicated motion design team. if they only have like 1 or 2 projects a year, it keeps somebody on salary. It's not really worth it.
Right.
And so we still do a lot of work with agencies that don't have motion design teams, or if they need a little extra help. But we've been able to, because of our network and our relationships, we've been able to kind of bypass the agency middleman on some of our projects and go direct to client, because those relationships went client side. And so, we're doing some stuff with Riot Games right now, and we've done some stuff with Disney, and those came from people we had worked with when they were agencies that are now working directly at those studios. And so
gotcha.
they come direct to us. But yeah, we do both, to answer the question. Yeah.
Cool. So to go back to what you were saying something about like treating your clients really well. So just a personal question.
Yeah.
So I had a client, did some work for, and kind of a tricky thing. So like we said, so my wife and I were a team. We said we could deliver a website, and the agency that we hired to deliver the website was based in the Philippines, and it just was a total disaster. Where I ended up just eating the cost and just like basically just doing a ton of work for free and saying like, I'm so sorry. But then
it's not only putting your tail between your legs, but then you still have to deliver. Like, it's sorry is not enough. It's like, here's my pride and the final product. Double blade.
So that was bad, but he also asked for videos, and we delivered exactly what he wanted, and he was pleased with, what we delivered him.
Yeah.
And this one particular project, it was some kiosk video that they're doing for Microsoft. And so I made it, and I have the source files here. And so they keep coming back, and one of the guys just keeps on asking for the source file over and over and over, all these little changes. And I've been giving them little changes here and there for free just because I felt so bad about the website. Yeah. But then today, actually, he asked for, the source file again. I finally told him, hey, like, here's what I usually charge for a source file. Like, I was trying to be polite about it. But do you think that would be looked upon as kind of a blow where they're like, I'm never going to work with this guy again? Or what do you think?
That's a great question. So we recently changed the way that we delivered project files. Originally, we had worked for the first 3 years, we said, okay, we're going to hang on to our project files, and you need to come back to us with any changes or any revisions or whatever you need done. And we let them know up front that we were charging, I think it was like 15% on the total cost to deliver project files as well. And the reason behind that was, Mike, I believe, told me that this analogy that, you're kind of like a chef, and you're in the kitchen, and you're creating a meal for somebody, and you deliver them the meal. You don't deliver them your secret recipe per se. They're paying for the meal. They're not paying for the recipe. But as we started working with larger clients, that became such a deal breaker, and I can completely understand why, because they were paying us to create the work for hire in the contracts. They were paying us for the work, and they needed to be able to back up their data, and they also needed to be able to pass off those files to other departments who were going to be supplementing the things we were doing. And so, for example, we do 3 or 4 aspects of some live video that was going to be in the Barclays Center or something. And then they'd have another agency who was doing parts 3, 4, and 5 or whatever numbers. And they would need our smoke assets.
Gotcha.
And we would need their 3D models. But, if they're like, we're paying you, we want the work is ours. And so we recently changed that. And instead of just billing them extra, we just factor that into our total costs. We will be delivering project files, and we're taking the risk of them not coming back to us and just, doing iterations of our project files for years and years and years. So
right.
something that we try and factor in. So it's not. I don't think one way is right versus the other. I think it depends on the client, but it a conversation up front about what the project file deliveries entail is maybe something that'll be helpful to do up front from now on. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I think
did
you're
you
right.
Did you have that conversation up front with? Did you have that
Well,
conversation about?
So the first original SOW that I created for him, it states, all, I charge X amount for the project files, and then it just kind of got annoying that I think he finally hired some guy on who he had a little experience in After Effects, but not so much. And they just kind of kept on coming back with just these little tiny changes, and I really did not want to do them. And so it'd be easier to give them the After Effects files, but I told them, I was like, hey, it's going to be this amount, and they actually agreed to pay it. But I'm wondering if that is just putting a sour taste in their mouth, and that's just going to hurt me in the long run, or because it is like an extra chunk of change, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to do any work. This is great, But I don't know if they're just going to be sour towards me now.
No, I don't think so. If it's hard to say per client, but generally speaking, like casting a giant, blanket statement, that most clients are happy to have the project files because it empowers them to make those little annoying changes.
Right.
I mean, I can just imagine the client being like, hey, we need to change the comma here, and I feel like an idiot because I have to reach out and ask Dan, or I have to ask Eric, Tim, or whoever to make this tiny little change, and I could just do it super easy in-house with our guy that tinkers in After Effects or whatever. But it may actually be a good thing as opposed to souring their mouth. That may show that you trust them, or I don't know.
Yeah, because we had it's a hard one because I actually don't. Oh man, it's been a hard client. I'm not like the biggest fan, but I'm just like, I don't want a sour taste in someone else's mouth. It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Well, Eric,
for
you what? Go ahead.
For your listeners, they need to follow up on this. Dan, did you deliver those project files, and what happened with that client? Were they upset? Were they sour? Pretty good.
Well, Eric, thanks for the phone call. Thanks for your time, because I know you have a lot going on. Just want to tell everybody. So Eric you were one of for me, you were probably like the person who, I don't know, you sent me an email that like mentored me and really encouraged me to do motion graphics full time. And then you were the one who basically got you and Mike and Tim got the word out about the motion graphic meetup group. So you guys, I have a ton of respect and consider you guys all friends. So thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Glad that my letter, didn't scare you off and that you were able to make some decisions based on that. And I'm really glad you pursued it. I mean, seeing your stuff has come so far in the past year and a half, man. It's looking so good. So it's awesome to see you doing just killer work, and your wife doing the design stuff now. It's just looking so good. So keep it up. Thanks, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And I've shared your letter with people. It's going on. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Gift that keeps on giving. Oh, good. Yeah. Glad to hear that. I'll hear it's like that phone tag game where it gets passed on so many times it becomes distorted. I'm going to hear in 5 years from now somebody saying some crazy I don't know. I can't even think of anything right now. Yeah. Cool.
All right, man. Well,
cool way to call me. I can't even think of anything right now. Sorry.
All right, Eric. Well, you have a good rest of the night. Talk to you later.
All right.